Key states in focus. Trump's political roadmap for the upcoming elections. First of all, leave a like, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications, because here we go far beyond the headlines. We'll understand what's really happening behind the most strategic political game in the world. You've probably noticed that every time Donald Trump appears on the scene, the whole planet holds its breath. But the question no one answers is, what is he really planning? And why do some of the most contested states in the U.S. seem to be moving in his direction again? What's coming next isn't just another election. It's a global chess game where every move in the United States reverberates in energy prices, international alliances, and even military tensions. Trump returns to the board with the same rhetoric that made him famous, America above all, but now in a more polarized, more digital world, and one more weary of empty promises. Some see him as the savior of the economy, while others fear him as the trigger for a new era of instability. In either case, ignoring him is impossible, and that's precisely why understanding Trump's political map is understanding the future of world powers. Each state, each vote, each strategy carries a message for the world. The empire is still determined to fight for power. And if American politics is the barometer of global geopolitics, perhaps we are facing the beginning of a new cycle. One that will define not only who governs America, but who dictates the rules of the planet. The return of the presidential race and Trump's strategic focus. The American political landscape has once again become ablaze, and Donald Trump, with his controversial charisma and direct rhetoric, is once again at the center of the game. After years of tension, lawsuits, and polarization, the former president resurfaces with a well-defined strategy to reclaim the ground that led him to the White House in 2016. He understands that politics, before being about parties, is about emotions, and no one, like him, knows how to trigger feelings of belonging and revolt at the same time. The narrative of "Taking Back America" is not just a slogan. It is a call that resonates with millions of voters who felt forgotten. Trump observes the electoral map like a seasoned player examines a chessboard. Each state is a piece, and the right pieces can decide the game. He knows that the path to power is not through unanimity, but through strategy. While many politicians try to please everyone, Trump prefers to divide and conquer. He relies on the conviction that conflict mobilizes more than consensus. And, unlike his opponents, he speaks the language of the streets, of the farmers, the truckers, and the workers who feel distant from the political elites of Washington. But what makes this new race different is the context: a more divided country, an unstable economy, and a media increasingly distrustful of itself. Trump realized that voters don't just want promises, they want identity. And that's where he stands out. He sells not just ideas, but a sense of belonging. His return is more than a candidacy. It's an attempt to prove that he is still the gravitational center of America. And behind the scenes, his strategists are already drawing up a plan for what he calls reconquering the map. The power of undecided states. Why they decide everything. In the United States, winning a presidential election isn't a matter of national majority, but of geographic strategy. And that's where the famous swing states come in, the undecided states. They are the ones that make the pendulum of power swing between Democrats and Republicans every 4 years. While California and Texas are already strong contenders on each side, places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona become political battlegrounds. Trump understood this early on. It's not necessary to conquer the entire country, only the territories that change color according to the mood of the people. These states function as the beating heart of American democracy. They reflect the real country, those who work in factories, cultivate the land, and depend directly on decisions made in Washington. It is in these places that unemployment, inflation, and immigration translate into concrete votes. Trump, with his populist flair, speaks directly to these pains. When he promises American jobs for Americans, he is not speaking in abstractions. He is talking to the Ohio man who saw his factory close, or to the single mother in Georgia struggling to pay the rent. And the curious thing is that, in these states, voters don't just vote with reason. They vote with their stomachs, their wallets, and their pride. They are less ideological and more emotional, which makes them unpredictable and decisive. Therefore, every visit, every rally, and every word from Trump is calculated to touch the sense of belonging of these forgotten Americans. He knows that flipping 2 or 3 states is enough to change the whole story, and it is in this game of millimeter precision that the real political war begins, the terrain where it is decided who will be the next owner of the White House. Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, the 3 pillars of the American election. These 3 states form the true gravitational axis of American politics. Florida, with its explosive mix of retirees, immigrants, and business people, is a microcosm of the entire country. There, Trump found fertile ground for his discourse of prosperity and patriotism. The combination of tax incentives, strict immigration policy, and anti-establishment rhetoric transformed him into an idol for a significant portion of the local electorate. Florida is more than a state. It's a political barometer, where social and economic changes happen first, and the rest of America watches later. Pennsylvania, on the other hand, is the industrial and emotional heart of this contest. It was there that Trumpism showed its strength in 2016, when steel and coal workers began to dream again of stable jobs. Small towns, marked by economic decline, heard in Trump not just a politician, but an echo of hope. Even with the ups and downs of 2020, he hasn't abandoned the territory. Each rally on Pennsylvania soil has the tone of reconquest, an attempt to rekindle the flame of lost confidence. He bets that the silent dissatisfaction of the American worker is still his greatest ally. And then comes Michigan, the state of factories and exhausted middle class, once synonymous with prosperity, and now a stage for broken promises. Trump uses Michigan as a symbol of his fight against the globalist system, an expression that delights his followers and irritates his critics. He talks about recovering national pride, bringing industries back, and restoring the American dream where it began, in warehouses and on assembly lines. And it's curious how, amidst so much rhetoric, many still believe he can do it. After all, in these lands, hope is stubborn, and the electoral map is drawn based on it. The new electoral frontiers, Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada in contention. These 3 states have become the new minefield of American politics, and Trump knows that each one represents a different challenge. Arizona, historically Republican, surprised the country by swinging to the Democratic side in 2020. Since then, the former president has invested heavily in rebuilding bridges, betting on dissatisfaction with immigration, and the economic resentment that has grown in rural areas. He understands that the Arizona voter, once loyal to the party, now seeks a narrative of strength and identity. And that is exactly what he offers. Georgia, on the other hand, is a portrait of the demographic shift in the United States. Young people, Black and Latino voters, are slowly altering the profile of the electorate, which has raised red flags among Republicans. Even so, Trump believes he can turn the tide with the same formula that made him successful: fiery speeches, appeals to security, and promises of economic growth. He transforms each rally in the state into a symbolic battle, presenting himself as the man who fights against the system and who is not afraid of direct confrontation with the political and media elites. Nevada, on the other hand, represents a balance between economic pragmatism and political disillusionment. The state, driven by tourism and gambling, suffered greatly from pandemic restrictions, and Trump uses this wound as an argument against the Democrats. He talks about freedom, about letting people work, and his rhetoric resonates with small business owners and freelancers who felt the weight of government measures. Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada, together, form the new strategic triangle that could decide America's future. And it is precisely in these territories that the Trump campaign is betting everything, with the confidence of someone who sees politics as a war of persistence and narrative. The impact of domestic policies on voter turnaround. Behind the speeches and waving flags at rallies, the American vote has an invisible barometer: the wallet. The economy, jobs, and inflation are the true drivers of electoral decisions. Trump knows this and therefore builds his narrative on the return of prosperity that, according to him, was interrupted by the Democrats. He cites GDP growth, tax cuts, and the drop in unemployment during his administration as proof of competence. And when he speaks, it's not about cold numbers. It's about the pride of seeing the economy moving again, of feeling that the work is worthwhile. Immigration is another point that weighs heavily in the balance. While his critics accuse him of xenophobia, his voters see Trump as the guardian of the border, the man who says what others don't have the courage to say. He presents immigration control as a matter of justice, not prejudice, a way to protect jobs, wages, and security. In cities near Mexico, this rhetoric resonates with families who feel forgotten by the federal government. For many, the wall is not a physical barrier, but a symbolic one, a promise that someone, finally, is looking out for them. And there's also the cultural factor, the feeling that traditional values are being eroded. Trump speaks to Americans who fear losing their identity amidst social change. He positions himself as a defender of family, faith, and patriotism, touching emotional chords that transcend politics. By combining economics, security, and morality, he creates a comprehensive and personal discourse, difficult to counter with simple data or graphs. That's why, for millions of voters, voting for Trump is less a rational act and more a gesture of resistance. Digital strategy and grassroots mobilization. Trump's online army. No American politician has understood the power of digital communication like Donald Trump. Since his first campaign, he has transformed social media into permanent platforms, and his followers into a disciplined troop. For him, Twitter, now X, Truth Social, and Telegram are more than platforms. They are ideological trenches. While other candidates hire marketing experts, Trump prefers to speak directly, unfiltered, without a script, in the same tone he would use in a bar conversation. This spontaneity makes him unpredictable, but also authentic, and that is precisely what fuels his base. Trump's online army is not just made up of fans, but also digital volunteers, influencers, alternative news channels, and anonymous pages that amplify his every word. They create memes, hashtags, short videos, and viral comments that spread in minutes. It's a decentralized but extremely effective campaign. Unlike traditional political machines, the Trumpist movement doesn't need a heavy structure. It thrives on the emotion and loyalty of millions who believe they are fighting for a greater cause. It's politics converted into community, and community transformed into power. This digital presence also redefines how politics is done. While his opponents try to respond with institutional speeches, Trump speaks to the public directly, almost intimately. He doesn't sell promises. He sells belonging. His rallies are streamed live. His speeches become clips on TikTok, and his most controversial statements generate global engagement. In the online world, he is simultaneously a candidate, an influencer, and a cultural icon. And perhaps it is precisely this fusion of politics and entertainment that keeps him so relevant, even outside of formal power. The Democratic response, how Biden, or another candidate, attempts to neutralize Trump's roadmap. While Trump pushes forward with his inflammatory rhetoric and digital strategy, Democrats are racing against time to rebuild an image of stability and moderation. Joe Biden, or whoever the party's candidate may be, knows that it's not enough to defend policies. It's necessary to contest narratives. The opposition tries to paint Trump as the man of chaos, the symbol of national division. However, this approach has a problem. The more he is criticized, the more he grows. The Republican electorate sees in the attacks from the media and the political elite confirmation that Trump is still the outsider who threatens the system. Democrats, then, try to balance reason and emotion. They focus on social issues such as affordable health care, environmental preservation, and racial equality, topics that mobilize new generations and urban centers. But while they talk about climate and diversity, Trump talks about jobs and security, issues that directly affect the daily lives of the average voter. It's a clash between two Americas, one progressive and urban, the other traditional and rural. Biden tries to present himself as the leader of balance, the guardian of democracy, but faces the natural wear and tear of a government marked by inflation and external crises. To compensate, the Democratic Party is investing heavily in technology and microsegmentation, using data to reach undecided voters in key states. However, its communication still seems too rational in a time when emotion trumps logic. Trump, on the other hand, speaks with passion, improvises, makes mistakes, but connects. The Democrats have plans. He has a purpose. And in the heart of the voter, purpose often weighs more than statistics. Therefore, the big question that lingers is, will the Democrats be able to dismantle the emotional force of Trumpism before the election clock resets again? The Deep America factor and the new nationalist rhetoric. Far from the big cities, there is another America, one that still believes in manual labor, the value of faith, and the pride of seeing the flag waving on the balcony. It is in this symbolic territory that Trumpism finds its deepest roots. This deep America feels ignored by Washington, betrayed by the elites, and ridiculed by the media. For these citizens, Trump is not just a politician. He is the voice that says loud and clear what many think but are afraid to declare. He embodies resentment and pride, frustration and hope, all in the same emotionally charged discourse. His nationalism is not new, but it has been reshaped for the digital age. America First has ceased to be a political slogan and has become almost a spiritual movement, a crusade for recognition. In churches, local businesses, and social media, the sentiment is the same. No one will take care of us but ourselves. Trump understands this and transforms patriotic discourse into an emotional bond, mixing religion, family, and national sovereignty. For many, he is the last bastion against a globalized world that threatens to erase borders, values, and identities. This rhetoric, though divisive, creates a sense of belonging. It's a mirror in which millions recognize themselves: the Iowa farmer, the Virginia miner, the Texas veteran. They see themselves as guardians of an America they believe is disappearing. And when Trump talks about making America great again, what they hear is making you heard again. That's the real secret of its strength. Not the political discourse, but the emotional promise of visibility and value. That's why, even under attack and controversy, the movement persists and grows, consolidating itself as one of the most intense cultural forces of the century. The possible outcome: how the political map could redefine the future of the U.S. The American political landscape has never been so fragmented, and paradoxically, so dependent on a single man. The electoral map that is emerging is not merely a contest between parties, but between two worldviews. If Trump wins, the country could see an even more nationalist shift, with protectionist policies and a return to strategic isolation. If he loses, Trumpism will continue to live on, transformed into a cultural and ideological movement, influencing generations of politicians who will try to reproduce his direct, polarizing, and media-savvy style. In either case, the America of the past no longer exists. The contest for key states has become a mirror of the country. Each border represents an open wound, each vote a choice between past and future. Trump is betting that the pain of the forgotten middle class, economic insecurity, and disillusionment with institutions will continue to be his greatest allies. The Democrats, on the other hand, count on the strength of minorities, young people, and progressive cities. The problem is that both speak of the same nation, but seem to inhabit different countries. And it is precisely this division that will make the next election a historic turning point. Regardless of the outcome, one thing is certain. The political map of the United States will never be the same again. Digital campaigns, the war of narratives, and the new force of populism have redefined how power is won. American politics has ceased to be about consensus and has become about belonging. Trump understood this before anyone else, and that is why, win or lose, his impact will remain. The electoral game may end, but the movement he created will continue to reshape America's destiny for a long time. Now that you understand how each state, vote, and speech intertwines in the American political chessboard, it's impossible not to realize how much the entire world revolves around these decisions. Trump's return is not just an electoral event, it's a sign that something bigger is moving behind the scenes. Alliances are shifting, economies are repositioning themselves, and global tension seems poised to reach a new boiling point. The question is, are we ready for what comes next? The political map being drawn in the United States may be the first reflection of a global transformation. Every promise made on American soil echoes across the borders of Europe, in the bases of the Middle East, and along the trade routes of Asia. And if there is a clear lesson in all this, it is that politics has ceased to be local. Now, every decision is global. It is up to us to observe with attentive eyes and an awakened mind, because what seems like just another election may very well be the beginning of a planetary reconfiguration. And if you want to understand what's behind these movements, what the political, economic, and spiritual signs are already indicating, download the ebook, The Signs of the Coming War. In it, you will discover how these events connect and what may be about to happen on the world stage. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because in the next videos we will continue to unveil the behind-the-scenes workings of this new global order that is forming before our very eyes.